My journey began innocently enough. As an avid hiker, the chance to explore the dense yet beautiful wilderness of the Pacific Northwest was too good to resist. I plunged into the untouched wild, my heart full of adventure, and my backpack packed with provisions. The first few days passed uneventfully. I hiked through misty valleys, towering green canopies, and silent stone monoliths. On the fourth day, as dusk settled, something changed. A dense, animalistic musk pervaded the air. Unfamiliar, eerie sounds pierced the twilight hush. I chalked it up to the unfamiliar wildlife and set up my camp, drifting off to the disquieting lullaby of the unknown. I woke with a start to the bone-chilling howl that pierced the silence of the night. It was a grating, monstrous bellow echoing through the trees. The sound was so human yet so bestial. Terror gripped me as I clutched my flashlight, my heart pounding in my chest. Silence. Cautiously, I unzipped my tent. My flashlight cut through the inky blackness, revealing only empty woods. As I scanned the tree line, my light fell on something monstrous. A colossal figure half hidden behind the trees. It had to be at least 8 feet tall, covered in matted hair, with eyes that glinted ominously in the dark. A gasp escaped my lips. The creature turned its massive head towards me, its glowing eyes fixed on mine. It was Bigfoot. The legends were real. Panicking, I stumbled back into my tent, zipping it closed. My breath came in ragged gasps as I grappled with the reality of the situation. There was no protocol for this, no hiking guide that prepared me for an encounter with a creature of myth. Time seemed to stretch into infinity as I huddled in my tent, praying for dawn. But a crunch of underbrush jolted me from my terror-stricken stupor. It was approaching. Each earth-shaking footfall resonated through the forest floor, growing louder and closer. Suddenly my tent shook violently, ripped off its stakes, and I was bathed in the chilly night air. There it stood, towering over me, a silhouette of pure primal terror. The smell was unbearable, a mixture of wet fur and decay. Its eyes, curious yet horrifying, bore into mine. Something unexpected happened next. It reached out, not in violence but in a twisted attempt at communication, extending a huge, gnarled hand towards me. I stared, frozen as it traced a large, claw-tipped finger down my cheek. Its touch was cold and rough, a stark contrast to the warmth of my fear-soaked face. Then, just as suddenly as it appeared, it retreated. The forest swallowed the monstrous form, leaving behind only the chilling echo of its presence. I fled at first light, leaving behind my gear in a mad dash towards civilization. Every shadow, every rustle of leaves spurred me on, igniting the terror that clung to me like a second skin. I survived that ordeal, a tale no one believes. Yet every time I close my eyes, I feel the rough, cold touch of Bigfoot against my cheek. A chilling reminder of the horrifying unknown that lies within the heart of the wilderness. I've always found solace in the wild, its primal beauty stirring a kind of inner peace. It was the scent of dew-kissed pine that greeted me on this particular morning. The familiar, comforting embrace of nature coaxing my city-weary soul into tranquility. The hike had begun like any other blissful isolation, my only company. Little did I know the peaceful veneer was soon to shatter. An hour into the trek, a patch of fog crept in, unusual for the time of year but not alarming. The woods adopted an ethereal beauty under its veil, an unearthly stillness enveloping me. Deeper in, however, the fog seemed to thicken, reducing visibility to mere feet. Within the shrouded silence, I heard a rustle, like the quiet crunch of leaves under a weight. Turning around, I saw nothing but the fog and shadowy trees. I blamed my mind for playing tricks, straining my ears only to hear the rhythm of my own heartbeat. Suddenly, a gruff howl echoed, an icy gust following, ruffling the forest canopy, sending a shiver down my spine. I stopped dead in my tracks, scanning the murky surroundings. Just the wind, I thought, attempting to suppress the unnerving sensation creeping in. I continued walking but could not shake the feeling of being watched. Every so often, a low growl, a snapped twig, or an unexplainable shift in the fog seemed to shadow me. Gradually, the forest lost its charm, morphing into a living nightmare, In my fear, I lost my sense of direction. The dense fog and eerie noises left me disoriented. Suddenly, I stumbled upon a small clearing, the mist inexplicably receding. In its center was a monolithic stone, uncannily smooth, covered in moss and alien symbols. I felt a pull towards it, an irresistible force. As I laid my hand on the stone, I felt a deep thrumming, like the pulse of the earth itself. I watched in horrified fascination as the stone began to glow, the symbols illuminating in a sequence. Abruptly, a booming voice resonated in my mind. "Intruder, beware, for you have disturbed the slumber." As if responding to the voice, the fog surged, swirling into a form, a massive wolf-like creature, its eyes glowing an ominous red, its snarl a grotesque grin. In a panic, I sprinted away, the beast's growls hot on my heels. I felt its breath on my neck, heard the ground quaking under its massive paws. I tripped over an upturned root, hitting the forest floor hard. As I tried to rise, I felt the beast's cold breath wash over me. Turning over, I faced my impending doom. Its snarl had disappeared, replaced by a malevolent grin. It spoke, its voice the same that resonated from the stone. "You have awakened me. Now pay the price." I squeezed my eyes shut, bracing for the end. But instead of death, I was met with another voice, feminine yet powerful, whispering in my ear. "Show no fear. That is your weapon." Opening my eyes, I stared back at the beast, my heart pounding, but I forced calm into my gaze. An eternity passed in that moment, the world around us holding its breath. Then, unexpectedly, the beast reared back, its form dissipating into the fog. It was gone, leaving behind only a howl fading into the distance. Breathing a sigh of relief, I noticed the fog lifting, the trail emerging as if from a dream. The hike back was uneventful, the only evidence of my encounter being the adrenaline still coursing through my veins and the faint glow of symbols on my hand. The forest had reclaimed its serenity, but beneath it all I could feel a new respect, a new understanding. The beast had retreated, but its presence lingered, a dark reminder of the wild and its untamed horrors. I returned home, but the memory of the hike stayed with me. I can still feel the primal fear, the brush with the supernatural. But oddly enough, it beckons me, the wild with its hidden terrors and beauty alike. For the thrill, the rawness, the pure dread, it's all a part of the wild's haunting allure. The beast is still out there, and so is the stone. I don't know when, but someday I might find myself venturing again into the forest's enigmatic heart. For the wilderness is a cruel mistress, terrifying yet irresistible, and I am but a mere mortal, ensnared in her merciless, hypnotic gaze. I've always been an avid hiker, drawn to the tranquility and beauty of the deep woods. However, my last expedition into the heart of the forest would be far from peaceful. Little did I know that I was about to encounter something that would haunt me forever. It was a crisp autumn morning when I set out on the trail. The sunlight filtered through the dense canopy above, casting eerie shadows on the forest floor. The air felt heavy with a sense of anticipation, as if the woods were holding their breath, waiting for something to happen. As I ventured deeper, I noticed peculiar markings on the trees, strange symbols etched into the bark, almost like a warning or a message left by someone who had ventured this way before. Ignoring the unnerving feeling that crept up my spine, I pressed on, curiosity driving me forward. Hours passed, and I found myself in an unfamiliar part of the forest. The trees seemed older here, gnarled and twisted, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. I felt a sense of unease settle in as the atmosphere turned increasingly oppressive. Then I saw it, a flicker of movement in the corner of my eye. I turned, but nothing was there. The woods were deceiving me, playing tricks on my mind. Trying to shake off the eerie sensation, I decided to rest for a while and have a quick snack. As I sat, I heard whispers, soft, unintelligible voices carried on the wind. It was as if the woods were alive with secrets, conspiring against me. My heart raced, and I instinctively reached for my camera, hoping to capture any strange occurrences on film. But as I reviewed the pictures, they revealed nothing but the ordinary beauty of the forest. Determined to push forward, I stood up and resumed my hike. The sun was beginning to set, casting long, haunting shadows across the forest floor. I quickened my pace, eager to reach the safety of my campsite. That's when I heard a child's laughter, sweet and innocent, echoing through the trees. I couldn't see anyone nearby, and the laughter seemed to come from all directions at once. Fear gnawed at me, and I called out, hoping for an explanation, but my voice was met with silence. I decided to follow the laughter, foolishly thinking that perhaps someone was lost or in need of help. The woods grew darker, and an oppressive sense of foreboding weighed heavily on me. I stumbled upon a dilapidated cabin hidden among the trees, an ominous structure that sent shivers down my spine. Against my better judgment, I approached the cabin, drawn by an inexplicable force. As I got closer, I noticed that the laughter had ceased, replaced by an unsettling silence. The door of the cabin creaked open on its own, revealing an impenetrable darkness within. A part of me wanted to turn back, to flee from the sinister place, but something held me captive. As if in a trance, I stepped inside and the door slammed shut behind me, sealing me in darkness. Within the cabin, I found old, dusty artifacts scattered about. Children's toys, tattered photographs, and handwritten notes. Each item seemed to tell a haunting story of its own, one that was now lost in time. Then I heard it again, the child's laughter, closer this time, echoing through the cabin. Panic consumed me as I fumbled for my flashlight. With trembling hands, I aimed the beam at the source of the laughter. What I saw sent chills down my spine. Shadows danced on the walls, twisting and contorting into grotesque forms. The laughter seemed to emanate from these eerie shapes, as if they were alive, mocking me. I tried to run, but my legs felt like lead, rooted to the spot. The shadows advanced, closing in around me, suffocating me in their darkness. The laughter grew louder, merging with a sinister whisper that seemed to come from within my own mind. In that moment of terror, I realized that I had stumbled upon something otherworldly, something beyond human comprehension. I was not alone in the woods. I was in the realm of the unknown. The next thing I remember was waking up at my campsite, drenched in sweat, the first light of dawn breaking through the trees. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had narrowly escaped something malevolent. From that day on, I swore never to venture into the deep woods again. The haunting shadows and the child's laughter still haunt my nightmares, a constant reminder of the horrors that lurk within the heart of the forest. The sun was already sinking below the horizon when I started my hike. There was an air of solitude to the woods that chilled me, a vast echo chamber of silence with only my footfalls and breathing as a soundtrack. I'd traversed this trail 100 times, but that evening everything seemed different, unnaturally still. As dusk fell, the usual forest noises were absent. There were no insects chirping, no distant hoot of an owl, just the whispers of wind that rustled the treetops above. My flashlight beam cut a meager path through the growing darkness, casting monstrous shadows that danced and contorted along the trees. I arrived at my camping spot, a small clearing where I'd spent many a night before. Yet, tonight it was eerily quiet, the solitude almost tangible. I shook off the unease, chalking it up to my overactive imagination. I set up camp, my movements mechanical, thoughts preoccupied with the unearthly quiet. That's when I heard it, a faint melody, barely discernible above the rustle of leaves. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. It was a child's lullaby, gentle and soft, coming from deeper within the forest. I was miles from the nearest civilization. It couldn't be, yet the lullaby persisted, growing louder, as if calling out to me. Curiosity overrode my fear. I picked up my flashlight and followed the music. The melody twisted and turned, leading me further into the bowels of the woods. As I ventured deeper, the trees began to distort, their bark gnarled and grotesque, leaves an unnerving shade of crimson. It was as if I'd stepped into another realm. The music led me to a small, hidden glade. In the center stood an ancient tree, its bark almost metallic, glistening under the pallid moonlight. Hanging from its gnarled branches were dozens of small wind chimes made from bones, human bones. The wind blew and the chimes tinkled, producing an eerie lullaby. Terror clawed at my throat. I turned to run, but my path back was no longer there. The forest had shifted, my footprints erased. Panic set in. The chimes grew louder, their haunting melody now a furious tempest swirling around the grotesque tree. Desperate, I reached into my pocket, pulling out my knife. I ran towards the tree, slashing at the macabre wind chimes. As each chime fell, the lullaby grew quieter until only one remained. Suddenly, the forest roared to life, a cacophony of ethereal screams reverberating through the air. I recoiled, dropping my knife, my hands trembling. The last chime swung gently in the violent wind, its tune a soft whimper in the chaos. I lunged forward, tearing it from its branch. The moment it hit the ground, silence descended. I stood alone, in the heart of the forest, my panting the only sound piercing the stillness. The tree began to shrivel, its bark losing its metallic sheen, the crimson leaves fading to normal shades of green. The forest was no longer a twisted version of itself. It was just a forest. I found my way back to the campsite with surprising ease, the woods seemingly guiding me. The familiar hum of nocturnal life was back, the eerie silence replaced by natural forest noises. I'm still a hiker. I still love the woods. But now I respect its mysteries too, for in its heart lies a lullaby of bones, a terrifying memory etched into my mind, a melody I'll never forget. The lullaby may be gone, but the echo remains.